Hey everyone, welcome to another video in the Master Data Management in SQL series. My name is Elric, and in today's video we're going to begin going over the specific dataset number and creating a generalized procedure to drop and create defaults and to get the current default, which is going to allow us to move closer to the relationships. After this video, we're going to fill our process and process parameters table in one video, and then we will be able to move into definitions, and that heavily involves relationships. So you can start seeing the abstraction take place and the implied relationships take place. So we got two more pretty easy videos, and then we are going into crazy concepts for the rest of the way. So hope you enjoy. I need to create 5 procedures: the get current and drop and create default, a get specific dataset number source, and then one that will update our tables, and a top level procedure to iterate through all of these things. So I'm going to go ahead and begin. You can follow along if you'd like, or just watch, either or. Let's have some fun. First things first, functions. FNC is my prefix. I'm going to do get dataset, specific dataset number, and source. It's gonna receive a dataset ID. It's gonna return an integer. And since we have synonyms now, we got to make sure we are using them. So that is it for the function. Awesome. Just something simple. I'm going to give you a data set ID and I want you to return it. And this is how we're going to remove selects from everywhere. And we're going to call a specific function. So if we ever need to make modifications to the specific get, then we can come to this function and do it. So now I need a get and a drop and create default. Dataset ID. Oh. There we go. So dataset ID, database ID. And I'll need names for each of those. I'll need the default current. And I will need a parameter this time. So SQL script default current base parameter execute. Excellent. So I think this is good enough to start. Same thing. I'm going to go to one of my tables and find a default. Look at the specific dataset number, just because, and script as, drop it and create. Get rid of our goes and move it over. Oh, this is the get. My bad. So what is it? Awesome. So that means we should have a column name and we should have a table name. Excellent. So that will be our script. So where table name equals bam. So that should be our get. It's going to get one of these items. And we want to pay attention to how numerics have double parens and our nulls have single and our actual nulls have nothing. So there's no default assigned to this. So we can initialize variables. I'm gonna go ahead and drop this now. There we go. And I need to use and it's really funny when we get into the seeing if the default constraint is there. Parent object IDs work a little funny. If you do not call the correct database or use the correct database, you can still get returns back. And I'll show you what I mean. It's bizarre. But yeah. And that means we're gonna need a parameter, which will just be, actually, let me just copy this. Yeah. So easy enough. Now we just have to execute this and return this. Database, dataset, data point. Data point. Database. And dataset. execute with our execute our parameter and our default current equals default current output. Awesome. So I'm going to leave the database data set on the inside. I want a data set ID to get the default current. And I'm going to, no. So this data point name is actually going to be a data point type ID. Once we get our relationship tables up, because that's how we're going to find our default. We're going to attach defaults to data point types, not columns. It's too much to do columns. And this kind of helps enforce the idea that you are defining data, you've defined data, you have a specific default. I will show you also how to make special rules, but we really want to stick to some sort of rule ourselves. This specific data point type has a specific default. If you need a different default, you need to define a new data point type. But again, we are going to, well, I'll show you how to program special cases using the class family type structure. So I believe this is it, and I will just copy this code, go to interface main, and I'll just edit a utility. Data set. Default. Get. And I'm going to put this under system. Excellent. I'll just replace all this code. Oh, did I overwrite end? Nope. Okay. And I'll bring these guys to the top. And before we can save this, we need to database ID equals database ID from dataset table. We also want the dataset name. And repeat the process for database name. Excellent. So that should be good. Got our data point name coming in, which will be replaced here. Awesome. I just noticed my token was off. It's good to catch. Ooh. Okay. Now that looks good. So that is our get current I'll delete the get. So that's our get current. Now I'm going to go down to a table and script out the drop and create of a default. And we're going to come back and rename our get current to update, because we're just going to drop and create it. There's no update, unfortunately. So I will paste this here, and we will look for that pattern. There we go. So that is our pattern, but this time we're going to check for the existence. Oh, I kind of wanted to show you guys this. So I'm in system, I'm in DB interface main. To get our defaults, I think it's name and object name, parent, object ID from default. Yeah. So I'm in interface main and I will run this. Oh, I'm in interface main and I will run this pointing to system main. And when I run this, we actually get a collision with some parent object IDs. This is completely wrong, but the query is 100% right. And this is what we're trying to avoid by taking control of our own things. These object IDs are used for each database. But now they all match up. Really interesting thing that I discovered. So keep watch for things like this. Even though we're calling it from the system, from the database, we want to make sure that we are using also. We want to be in that scope, if you will. But that is what we need. Actually, I thought there was something else. That's the definition. No, we won't need that. Okay. Nope. Oh yeah, that's right. Because the column doesn't matter. Because at least SQL automatically names their things appropriately. So if exists, cut select one from the database's default constraint where the name, and we will just copy this because that's what it's going to look like. And our parent equals our data set. So if it exists, we're going to drop it. And no matter what, we're going to add it. And I'll just update this to create. Copy this stuff, come down here and paste it, and update the name. So easy enough. Same kind of thing. We're going to, oh, just realized I have to mark this as output. I did not mark that as output. And we're just going to say default value. So this procedure is going to set a default for a dataset ID, a data point type ID, and a value. But this is input. I just have to update my other procedure. Hey, kitty. All right. Do we need any outputs? No. Do not need outputs. We do need the database name and the dataset name. Data point name will be incoming. That'll be a create. That will be a create. This will be non-existent. And we have one more replacement. So I am going to duplicate my default value. Oh, come on. Oh, that was a little slow. That was crazy. I'm going to come back down to my declare. I'm actually going to create a converted because we have to add some logic to it. We have to say select default value converted equals if default value, if the default value is numeric. Because even if you pass in a string, if it just contains a number, it'll recognize, hey, you're numeric. There we go. True is and false is single. So that will allow us to make sure that we are only adding and removing parens in one space. So now I just realized there are two updates I need to make in our Git. So I'm just gonna finish this guy up. Oh, this will be default value with our converted default value. And that one should be good. There we go. So, where's my dataset default? Get current. I need to mark this as output. And I'm actually going to make a new one called default current raw. And I'm going to update my parameters.
Awesome. So when I call this stored procedure, I will get a null string, a null value, or the word null in a string, a null value, or an integer back, which will help me not write this code everywhere else. This is going to take care of the transformation. I will only be calling this procedure. So I believe default current is out and default current is out. All right, and I wanted to delete the get. So the next one's pretty easy. I believe we can reuse default update. We're just gonna get a dataset ID here, and we're gonna call it Specific DataSet Number update. So when we call this, we know that something is wrong with the specific dataset number. And all we're going to do is select it. Control-Shift-R. Come on, I believe in you. There we go. And then we'll update the column accordingly. Use database name. Update dataset name. Set int specific dataset number. Easy peasy. So this goes away, these remain, this gets updated. Default goes away. Oh. And then I'll just clean that up. So that is our 4 out of 5 procedure. I have to mark this as create. There we go. And we're just going to send it a dataset ID. It's going to get the database dataset name, and it's going to update because our defaults didn't match or something like that. And our last one is the top level. So for this, is there something I can iterate through? I think it's this guy. Yep. So just altered my system object table create. Do system dataset. And that's all I'm going to call it. This is going to be our master procedure because this is targeted functionality. we need to do this specific thing. So now I will, instead of getting subjects, I will be getting data sets of the SQL table variety. I'm gonna make sure I'm consistent. So actually, let's do that across the board. No filter. And I'll just get rid of these. So that means dataset ID. Cursor through, dataset first, followed by dataset ID, followed by database ID. Copy my fetch next, replace my fetch next. Let's format that. I will need a default and a specific dataset number. And yep, that's what it should be for now. So first thing in our logic, we want to get our default for our current data set. And I'm going to hard code the column we're looking for this specific thing, because we'll circle back around or spiral back around and create a cursor that will check all the data points in the current table and just send forward the dataset ID, and then this procedure will be responsible for piecing it together, which will help a lot. For now, we just want to push through. I mean, we can't do that without the relationship table, and we need this to get the relationship table up and running. So that is the goal. What else do we have? This should just take a data set ID. Yep. And this is where we will select our specific dataset number from the function again, even though we are in the dataset cursor. We are going to only do this one way, and that consistency will help us in the long run. Okay, so I get my specific dataset number, I get the current for this. This is an output variable, so let's make sure it's null. Loop through, gonna get something back. I'm either going to get a null back, because there's no default assigned, or my default is not going to equal my specific dataset number source. Those are the only two possibilities. From there, I'm going to update that default. And update the columns accordingly. However, because this is a retake, it's my original one had no mic, and I don't want to do voiceovers. It doesn't feel natural. It's not natchy. On the outside, I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna update it anyways, just to make sure everything is what's supposed to be. So that's essentially it. All we have to do is run this and cross our fingers that we created 5 objects. That's fair, I believe. When we added new data sets for a relationship, I saw some zeros in there. Now they are ones. So I'll check a constraint. And it's a null. Should not be correct, or that is not correct. Just gonna debug this really quickly because I'm interested in what I may have missed. So we're not getting there. We're looping through accordingly. Oh. Damn it, Elric. Make sure you script out the correct default so you can look at it even though you've been working with the source. Alright, should have picked a different table. No problems. That happens. There we go. So all of our defaults should be set correctly. From now on, we are no longer going to be inserting records into that field for any table, except the relationship table, but those are implied. So it doesn't really count. So that's one less thing to worry about, and when we can circle around, then we can actually trim down our insert statements quite a bit, and in fact, we'll be circling around, spiraling around to create, I don't know, I think 7 or 8 views per table, and that's going to control our data flow. So most of these views have triggers on them, and it will make sense once we get there. Don't be afraid of these triggers because they don't do anything but prevent you from doing something. So I'm going to save this without the print statements, and that is going to be it for today. Thank you very much for watching. We just made sure all of our specific dataset numbers and all of our tables are up to date, so we can get ready to start creating definitions, essentially. System definitions. We want these columns to always be clustered, these columns to always be indexed, these columns to have unique indexes, these columns to have defaults, and these are the defaults. But before we get there, because our definition is going to have the ability to run a procedure, we need to fill in these two tables, the process and the process parameter table. So that will be our next video, and then the one after that, we're going crazy. We're going crazy into concepts. So hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. My name is Elric, and you have a good one.